Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today I will be running through my favourite bits from CitizenCon Day 1. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. And if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So, CitizenCon is over, and it was pretty wild, full of so many interesting and exciting updates, from the small to the massive, very unexpected updates as well. I had a great time, but it was very exhausting, and it was wonderful meeting everybody that I did, seeing new faces, seeing old faces from years ago, but I am also truly sorry to those who I did not get to meet. It really plays on my mind, but it was so chaotic, and the signal was terrible in Manchester. I don't even know why, so I wasn't able to get around everyone, and I am truly sorry to those of you who I missed. But today I will be running through my highlights and favourite bits from Day 1 to begin with, and then we will have a Day 2 highlights video coming soon. But I'm not going to spend too long on each highlight, as this video would last hours, plus I will be breaking down each panel individually, delving into everything and expanding on what we saw over the next few weeks. But these are the features that really stood out to me, leaving an impression more so than the others. But before we get to that, in celebration of CitizenCon, TOBII have teamed up with Cloud Imperium and VKB to not just offer you 15% off the TOBII Eye Tracker 5, but also the chance to win some very exciting prizes, with prizes including many VKB NXT Evo sticks, the TOBII Eye Tracker 5 with accessory bundle, and many RSI Zeus Mark II CLs and ESs. So some really incredible prizes there. I have placed a link in the description below where you need to go to enter the giveaways, plus I have provided my link below that will take you to that 15% off deal for the TOBII Eye Tracker 5. I can highly recommend them, as I use mine every single time I jump into the verse, and with these new persistent ship MFDs, being able to glance instantly at each MFD is such a benefit when flying around. Plus, Cloud Imperium and TOBII work together to provide the best head tracking experience, like camera boost and a whole slew of other settings as well. On that note, if you do pick one up, feel free to jump onto my Twitch channel so that you can take a picture of my settings to help you start out. Also, using that link in the description provides my channel with a direct kickback, and thank you so much to those of you who have done so already. Now, with that out of the way, let's move through the features I loved the most, roughly in the order that they appeared. Now, the first panel showed off Cloud Imperium's new tech called Genesis, which went through many upcoming features and improvements to the planet tech and where they're taking it to. This particular panel was one that I was really excited for, one of the most I was excited for, and it featured a lot of incredible stuff that not just looked insanely good, but also pushes the game to a whole new level that is really beyond anything that I have seen at this scale. Now, what stood out to me especially was how they are simulating the planets and nature and all that that entails, from new biomes like jungles, rainforests, and my new favourite, redwood forests, which I will certainly be building a few small shacks to live off-grid in when they come along, but it also just allows for more dense forests, like multiple times more dense than what we have now, and weather, finally, which are not timed events, but systemic and dynamic-based weather fronts rolling in depending on the planetary winds, the temperature, the pressure, and so on, like it does in the real world. Again, it is a simulation and not a set piece to look cool. Something even more impactful are seasons, realistic seasons that visually change with leaves changing colour and everything else you would expect, which combined with the varying soil types across all the planets, leading to real science behind growing plants and vegetation of varying types, meaning that when we are able to farm, which is a 1.0 feature by the way, we will need to ensure that we use the right soil for the planet, have the right weather and conditions like light and temperature to make sure that those plants in particular grow as they should. So these building blocks for planets create fully realized planets, each with realistic climates that don't just look incredible, but have actual gameplay implications. Nothing is just randomized for the sake of it. They use physically based rules that drive everything, and that to me is just wonderful as a setting. And as if all that wasn't enough, they are also doing a ton of optimizations and performance work to make the planets more efficient and visually better, with so much better tiling amongst many other things. Now next on my list was how they are massively expanding on planetary locations, even greater than I ever imagined. I always knew they wanted to populate planets with thousands of locations, but the actual amount of locations they're working on in such close proximity across the planets blew my mind. They are well aware of how barren the planets are right now in the verse, and with the player count on the rise, they will be going bigger, while ensuring that there is no repetition. Basically finding something around every 100 kilometers minimum, which is pretty crazy to think about. Not to say that there won't be barren areas or locations closer together than 100 kilometers, but the way they are grouping clusters of points of interest together, like distribution centers, surrounded with a few forward operating bases, and then moving further out you have mining outposts and refineries that support that location, and then caves where the miners might be going, trade posts and other things. It all makes sense and will offer no end of interesting gameplay and opportunities. Or they said you could see a criminal point of interest like an outpost where you might find ruins or crashed ships that have been shot down. It kind of makes sense to the environment depending on what's around there. But what really blew my mind was how each cluster can be grouped together with many others that they then call a sector, with 120 locations all tied close together, but on a planetary scale. And this can mean thousands and thousands of locations, each supported by the mission system, providing gameplay of all types. And here you can see there are 3,042 locations on one side of the planet. Now this is huge and means tons of gameplay of all kinds, not just missions but dynamic emergent gameplay that will finally allow players to remain in one area planetside for days, if not weeks, without feeling the need to travel anywhere beyond the surface. And not to mention, when roads come along too, being able to drive between them based on varying factors maybe forcing you to or requiring you to. This was actually above and beyond what I expected Cloud Imperium to do, and I was so impressed to see just the scale and the logic behind what they're doing here. And I can just imagine building a little settlement or shack down somewhere planetside and being able to see in the distance all these kinds of locations, having vehicles coming to and from and fights erupting and so forth. It is going to be quite impressive. Now briefly from that segment they also spoke about AI and the day-night cycles a little, and when you consider what we just saw with each of these outposts and locations having a full NPC day-night cycle from not just a human NPC aspect, but also for fauna and creatures, bringing life to these locations, making them feel active and alive. So anytime we visit them, be that intentionally or because we may have crashed there and we're trying to survive, it'll be amazing to get there and see exactly what everyone is doing, which will give the player a lot more choice in how they want to approach based on your reason to be there. For example, if you're assaulting the location, maybe waiting until dark when visibility is low and many NPCs are sleeping, or wait for a weather front to roll in and mask your sound and visuals via lightning and rain. Each location will make sense on who is there and what time of day it is, and that is something that I have looked forward to seeing in Star Citizen for so long. Now another segment that I won't spend too much time on, but I am super happy and excited to see it come along, is global illumination and star audio. Shadows, lighting and audio are all aspects in games that if they are not done right, they stand out massively and immediately ruin the immersion. So creating that realistic visual and audible soundscape is something that I am truly grateful for, and although I don't know when this is rolling out, probably incrementally rather than all in one go, but with all these locations, all these new updates, being able to see them in all their glory and hear everything about ships and locations as well is just going to make the game feel so much more alive and so much more vibrant. Now the next highlight that stood out to me massively was how they are finally expanding on organizations and getting more control into this system in-game. We have a brand new org app coming which firstly will allow those looking for an org to do so easily with all the information that they may need, although it does look like you are now only able to join 6 active orgs rather than 1 main and 9 or 10 affiliates, but we will speak about that in a dedicated video. But as an org owner myself, I was very happy to see these updates and options, like announcements, org information, and an events log, keeping a real-time record of everything that is going on, plus an events calendar, so that you can add meetups and all org activities with lots of options on what to show and present, but doing this in-game rather than having to go to a separate website, which a lot of people don't bother with. So it means more players who are actually in the game are going to see these things coming up and be able to make arrangements to join in properly. I also love that we will be able to acquire rep with guilds in-game as well as an org, and that will benefit the org in various ways, like buffs in different areas, and even earn loyalties with the orgs that you are in as a member. So if you are really helping out the org, you can gain loyalty benefits like better payouts, better reputation, and so much more. Now we also have a new members tab, so we can see every member and their rank, their location, leave notes, plus set permissions for each rank, which is something we have been needing for a while. Being able to not just give a rank to a member who has maybe been with the org for a long time versus a new recruit, and then giving them permissions based on that, so where they can go in a ship or where they can go in a planetside location. Also, one other aspect that I thought was really cool was alliances and enemies. Now, alliances more than enemies are going to be great for supporting and trading with others, or working together to build bases and space stations, considering certain orgs who might not be big enough to attain their own space station, being able to work together and have one to serve many other orgs is a really nice touch. But this whole rivals will be a cool thing as well, so you can see which orgs are hostile to you, but you can even create ceasefires and truces. So if you have come to an understanding or agreement with the orgs, you might be a little hostile to each other, but you don't want to be starting a war with them. So you can put them on a truce. The players in the org will see that there is a truce because they are, of course, representing you. Also, as we will see in the base building and station building panels, we will be able to now have org colours and logos displayed on all of our items, be that a weapon, armour, buildings, ships, and space stations. So a lot of great new updates here that will make running and joining organisations so much easier and get it all in game. Now, talking of armour, something on day one that I was really happy to see them expand on was the armour specialisations that make armour more focused in specific areas, helping players to really define who they are and get the most out of pursuing that specific role. Not that you'll be unable to do other things using most of the armors, but it just gives you more purpose, and you can boost your ability to perform in each role, which is something that I have been excited to hear about for a while now. Plus, we can now finally layer clothing and armor without restriction, which is one of the most requested features of all, and that alone is just a massive win. It also brings more thought in what you might need for any mission, as of course you will need an undersuit and a helmet if you want to go into the vacuum of space. Plus, your movement when in a cockpit wearing medium or heavy armor will restrict your movement ability versus that in a light suit or an undersuit, which is kind of where all the stats come in. And the stats that they have showed are not just limited to what they displayed here. There is a lot more to be understood, as well as if you have on a full set, you get a specialized feature, which is a real nice touch. But each stat adding to allow those who want to play a specific role to do so to their best, but visually they will represent their purpose as well. So, for example, racing undersuits look like they belong on a racetrack, whereas something with armor on, like a piece of leg armor, if it looks armored, it will offer damage mitigation. Also, as we know, EVA thrusters won't always come as standard, so there is a lot to consider and collect or craft, building up a collection of great looking and functional armors, picking and choosing depending on what you are doing that day. Also, I will say that the way they showed off the armors in this panel was pretty genius, presenting them as a band of crewmates who were setting out to take on the Sandworm. A bit of a double whammy show, and I really loved this segment. It was a lot of fun, plus it spoke about sandworms. Now, there's a lot to break down in this panel, which of course I will do a separate dedicated video on, but I am so happy to see this feature finally coming along, as it will allow those who really want to specialize more to do so, and this really stood out to me. Now, for the final part of the Dress to Kill panel, it was talking about fauna. As we know, it kind of led on from the Sandworm and the missions for monster hunting, which will be incredible. We will talk more about creature missions in the 1.0 breakdown video, but doing this as a group, recruiting players who have the ability to help in the various situations you might need when hunting a monster, depending on the monster as well, because the sandworm isn't the only monster we're going to be seeing. There will be a lot of other megafauna that we will see that are part of this mission progression system. But it does sound like it's coming relatively soon as well, because this was in-game, this was actual gameplay. Not finished, not polished, but it looked pretty good already, and they will be found on Monox, the sandworm, in the Pyro system, so I don't think we're going to be waiting too long before we start seeing these monster hunter missions, or at least the sandworm. Now, they also spoke about the different sizes of sandworms, how they will look different depending on where they live, which will also apply to all creatures. They wanted to show how fauna makes sense to the environment, how they can evolve and change based on that environment, and just be a part of the ecosystem as a whole. Now, it was a shame that we didn't actually get to see more of the creatures they plan on in-game, but as you can see here, there is a lot of range of creatures that they want for 1.0, plus more, I'm sure, that are yet to be seen. But I did count around 80 creatures here. I lost count every time I tried, but that is a lot. And then finally, it was Squadron 42 time. Now, personally, yes, I was very disappointed when I saw the 2026 window for Squadron's release, as I was adamant it was going to be a 2025 release. But watching the gameplay reveal, it was clear that there is still a lot more to do, like polishing, optimizing. We saw a few bugs. So after the initial disappointment, I am glad to see they have allocated themselves a good amount of time to get Squadron done to the standard that we want it to be, that it needs to be. Of course, we have no idea when in 2026 it'll release. It could be January, which would be just a little bit over a year from now, or it could be right at the end of the year, which could be 2 years away. But having that time to get polished should mean it doesn't have a release like other games. Plus, what we will be getting into the PU between now and the release of Squadron will certainly keep me entertained. Now, what they showed off looked visually incredible. The prologue was just that. It was a lot of introductions to the game mechanics and a lot of cutscenes, but it showed to what level they are taking it to, and in terms of storytelling alone, it looks better than most of the new movies that have been released. So I am really excited to play through this and immerse myself into the lore and the story of what exactly happened with the Vanduul. But those are the highlights of day one for me. The bits that really stood out, left a big impression on what's to come, but the main bit that I just cannot get out of my head is the scene planetside with the clouds, the storm front rolling in. That is where my head always returns to. But as I say, I will be breaking down each panel as we go, talking further about what we saw, what it all means, and shedding more light into how this will affect us in the persistent universe. Plus, I will be working on my highlights from day 2, which pretty much blew me away with crafting, base building, space station building. It was above and beyond what I was expecting. So a big thank you to CIG for putting that show on and showcasing everything that they are working on beyond 4.0. Of course, we still need 4.0 to come out now, but what CitizenCon was dedicated to was after 4.0, post 4.0. With that said though, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, do come over to twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome, the link is below. Hopefully going to be streaming today, talking further about what we saw, rewatching the panels together and just hearing everybody's thoughts, sharing my thoughts. If you want to be a part of that, do follow that link, hit that follow button, and come and say hello. Or just lurk in the background. You are all more than welcome, as I say. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Cannot do this without you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.